Hello, this is John from caveofprogramming.com. In this tutorial we're going to create not the full implementation but a stub of a Zoom list class. Now the idea behind this class is that it can store a list of Zooms, so we'll give it a method called add, which will enable us to add a new Zoom to a list which it will store internally, and we'll implement that in this tutorial. We're also going to add to it a function, a method, which we can supply coordinates to in a bitmap coordinate system, so integer coordinates, and it's going to return a pair of double coordinates, which are the coordinates calculated by some algorithm that we're going to look at perhaps in the next tutorial, by looking at the whole list of Zooms that we've stored. So you can have a go at that if you want to create a class that can store a list of Zooms. And if you can figure out how, also add a method that accepts integers x and y and returns a pair of double values. So if you feel like having a go at any part of that, then do pause the video and have a go. So let's create a new class here, a new class, and we'll call it Zoom list. Click finish. I'm not sure if we are going to use the constructor actually, but not the destructor. So I'll delete the destructor, and I'll do that in zoomlist.cpp as well. Now the constructor, first of all, one thing that it's going to turn out we'll need is we're going to need to store the width and height of the screen. So I could initialize these here as well if I want to. Again, this is kind of optional, it doesn't really matter here, but let's just do it for the moment. So initialize those both to 0, because initializing things does help reduce bugs, although here we're going to initialize these with the constructor anyway. And let's have an int width and an int height passed to the only constructor. Then we can go to the constructor in zoomlist.cpp, and we can add in and initialize a list. So m_width is initialized from width, and m_height is initialized from height. So if I save that and build it, did I do something wacky here? Let's take a look. So I think looks okay. But as usual, I've managed to screw something up. Did I call it m_width, m_height? And the warning here is undeclared. Yeah, I forgot to put the parameters in here. I'm not quite this bad when I'm actually focusing fully on it instead of talking, fortunately. But I must admit, I find the syntax checker certainly invaluable. Okay, so we've done that. Now let's create a method called add. So it's going to be void add, and it's going to add a const reference to a Zoom. So we'll call that Zoom with a lowercase z. Let's copy the prototype of this method for the moment. I've just copied it to the clipboard. And we're going to use a vector to store these Zooms. So I'm going to include up here vector. Now, by the way, one thing I just wanted to mention is that some people feel it's always better to type stuff like standard vector. This is going to be a vector of Zooms, and we'll call it Zooms. It's better to do that rather than writing using namespace standard, and the reason for that is that the standard namespace imports a lot of different classes and functions. So if you're going to use other C++ libraries, the classes and function names in that could conflict with the standard ones. But if you've got quite a small program and you know you're not going to use any other libraries anyway, I sort of feel it's just nicer to not have to see this and to type using namespace standard instead. But you do have to be a bit careful with it, as people have pointed out to me, that it's not always the best idea. But we'll do it here. Okay, so now we can implement this add method, which I already copied. Let's paste it in down here, put the implementation brackets in, and we need to say it's a member of the Zoom list. And all this is going to do, very simply, is it's going to say zooms.push back Zoom. So we're storing zoom in the zoom list. Finally, we want a method that maps from the bitmap coordinates to the actual fractal coordinates, and we're going to eventually put some sort of algorithm in that combines this list of zooms. So I'm going to call this method, let's call it do zoom, and it's going to clearly take the coordinates of the pixel that we want to apply the algorithm to. So we're going to apply it pixel by pixel to transform those into the fractal coordinate system. So let's have an int x and an int y, put the semicolon in there. Now the return value, we want to return a pair of values, and one easy way to do that is if you include utility, and then in the standard namespace we've got something called pair. This is a template class, and we have to say what types of things we're storing in the pair, which are going to be double values, coordinates in the fractal system. And this class or struct or whatever it is, it just stores a pair of values, so we can use it to return our pair of values here. So I'll copy this, and we'll go to zoomlist.cpp again, paste in the prototype, put the brackets in, put the class name in to say that it's a member of this class right here. And to get this to compile for the moment, I'm just going to return pair. That's a pair of double again, and we'll use the constructor to initialize this to 0. Then I'll go to my main.cpp, which is here, and instead of including zoom.h, we'll include zoomlist.h. Now I also need to make sure, because I don't know if I did it yet, I'm going to have to include zoom in here, zoom.h, because otherwise we won't be able to refer to our zoom class. If I do that, I should be able to hopefully compile it. Going to be a few still unused variable warnings as usual, but no, there's these two are also getting warned about that are not used, but that's fine, there's no errors, so we can still run that program, and so we've built it, we can still run it just as before, and we get our fractal looking just as it did before. Okay, so in the next tutorial probably we'll get on to actually implementing zoom. So until next time, happy coding.